let's get to it. If the board wants to, there we go. All right. So as we do each and every week, we look back at the weekend that was, and we figure out what we learned from this past weekend. So Sean, I'll start with you. What did you learn this past weekend?
Just an arm just coming right into Mikey's shot there. You all right up there, Mike?
The arm of Lady Caliente always draws attention there, Evil Twin, let me tell you.
Oh, my goodness. So what did I learn? Well, I learned a lot of things, but the one thing I learned probably more than anything else is that as we build our top tens and we try to figure out who's on top and who's the strongest team and that kind of thing, if I'm looking forward to the playoffs, to the Super Bowl, I have learned that there are
playoffs,
probably 4 teams, maybe only 3, that I think are playing for a Super Bowl title at this point. As far as I'm concerned, are there other teams that could make a push and win? I mean, obviously, any given Sunday playoffs, you never know. But as far as what I would consider Super Bowl contender teams with the way they're playing right now, I would make the list at 4, and more on that later. But I think as the cream is rising and the dust is falling, there's a whole lot of middle ground and a pretty heavy anchor at the bottom. But when you're looking at that cream at the top, it's a very thin layer, I think, at this point.
Yeah. I tend to kind of agree with that. And that layer at the bottom is some of that's like the coffee grounds that just end up getting like thrown away. And it's like more on those teams later, but I feel
there's a lot of, and there is a lot of grounds.
There's somebody
European coffee
together was excruciating.
Somebody forgot to put the filter in the coffee machine.
It's all over the place. It's on the counter. It's on the floor. It's I'm pretty sure the coffee that was put in was just old grounds. I'm pretty sure that's where the league is right now. But obviously I'm not going to go too much in detail, and it doesn't have to be a ton of debate. But that's what I learned. Very few championship caliber teams right now.
Yeah, I don't think you're that far off in that assessment. I think you're pretty much spot on. We'll obviously talk about the rankings coming up later in the show. But yeah, definitely few and far between when it comes to great teams in the National Football League. Student of the game, Kyle Nash, what did you learn this past weekend?
I learned for all these machinations with getting away from the BSC and getting past the four team playoff to the area where we now have the official college football playoff of 12 teams. Nothing can beat an easy ass schedule. This bullshit where Penn State, Indiana, and I'm sorry, gentlemen, the Fighting Irish are all hiding at the top somehow while we're looking at teams that are better than them. It's just disgusting. But I'm also learning that sometimes pretenders get built to the top so that their fall is that much more sweet to watch.
Yeah, we'll certainly talk about the college football playoff rankings here in a couple minutes as well.
Oh, sorry. More on that later. There we go.
There we go. But a little bit of a shakeup as a few teams in the top 6 went down again this weekend. Kind of been the story of the year, especially over the last month or so. But we'll get our reactions to the latest college football playoff rankings here in a couple of minutes. Mikey B, what did you learn this past weekend?
What I learned is if you're an AFC North team and you have the best running back in football, maybe you should give it to him more than 13 fucking times. He had less fucking rushing attempts than Lamar had incompletions. What are we doing?
Yeah.
13 for 65 and a touch. I get it. It's fucking Pittsburgh. What the fuck?
You
do? What the fuck? I mean, that's the perfect. Yeah, both of those perfect. Because at one point in the game plan, go, you know what? Fuck it. Let's stop running it.
I think you're looking at a trend there with Baltimore.
That's a very good one.
I feel like Baltimore does that a lot. I feel like big games, playoff games, the ones where they fall short, you see them somehow against the Chiefs and the Bills and the Steelers and against playoff teams for some reason, despite the fact that they've spent the last decade building a brand of we run the ball and we push people around. it becomes this flashy, futuristic, look what Lamar can do. And it doesn't seem to work. And I don't know if it's, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses and you're trying to make him Patrick Mahomes and you're trying to make him Josh Allen. He doesn't have to be. I'm with you, Mike. Keep it simple.
I
talked about it with the Eagles in the couple losses earlier this year when they gave Barkley less than 15 or 20 touches in games that they had no business throwing a lot, and they lost those games. If you have a weapon, use it.
I get it to an extent, and it was 12 carries for 34 yards if you take away the 1 for 31 yards.
Right.
And I get it. The fumble, that changes game plans and things along those lines. But last time I checked, Derrick Henry is on another level that you don't bench a guy like him because he fumbles. It's just frustrating. It feels like they got away from the game plan. It feels like they left a lot of points on the fucking field. And
Justin Tucker also left some points on the field.
Can we be clear about that too? Yes, thank you, Jim, for pointing that out. By the way, hey, listen, if you expect that game plan to ever be predictable, folks, this is the greatest rivalry in the NFL football league. To hell with your historical Bears-Packers bullshit. Fine. Green Bay playing the Decatur Stadiums is cute and everything. But I have to point out this, and listen, there is plenty of reason to have pointed out the lemon booty with overreaction and being afraid to run the ball. I will certainly accept that defense. But fellas, all of the examples you've mentioned in the form of the Buffalo Bills, of the Kansas City Chiefs, in the Pittsburgh Steelers, the commonality is there's a little bit of a reason to be afraid of running the football because they're pretty goddamn good at stopping it. The issue happens to be that the Chiefs have a guy in Chris Jones that could be an MVP candidate if people did more than watch stats. Okay? The Bills have a ridiculously good defensive tackle core, and I have been screaming it from the rooftops for about as long as I've been calling the Kansas City Chiefs a defensive team.
Is that what that sound was?
Yeah, well, thank you for acknowledging it there, Sean. I actually feel touched.
Last night.
That's what she said. Anyway, so with all that being said,
that's what she said.
Yeah, I think there's some there. And if I'm not saying don't criticize it, Mike, before you retort.
No.
But
I think once I retort, I think my frustration will become very more apparent with what's going on.
I don't know. You did pretty fucking good to open the comment.
So in their 4 losses,
yeah, I was
Derrick
saying,
Henry,
I
13, 18, 11, and 13 carries.
Yeah,
you traded for this guy. You traded for this guy to use him more. Fucking use him.
Well, I mean, are you counting week 1 like in that?
Yeah, that would be one of their
all 4 losses. All of their losses.
So, and listen, again, not saying it isn't a crime beyond reproach. You've done a fine job breaking it down. I'm not even here to say I disagree with you. But before we go sailing John Harbaugh and coaching staff up the creek, the real question is, hey, are you going to be this afraid in January? That's the question I would ask if I were a Baltimore fan.
I would agree with that assessment. That's a good question to ask.
And I mean, even in their 2 out of their 7 wins, the 2 games against Cincinnati, sorry, Mike.
That's fine.
Derrick Henry had 16 carries for 68 and 15 carries for 92. So
and
like
those was a 51-yard rush in overtime to set up the game-winning fucking
right,
football.
Exactly. So when you even look at those 2 games, which were extremely close. Now I feel bad I brought it up.
No. See, I decided to go the Ravens because I almost went homer on the Bengals, and I didn't want to get homered early. So,
but more on that later. No,
later.
but yeah, I mean, even in those 2 games, which were close, those are 2 games where he was under 100, and the Ravens almost lost those games. So, like, yeah, I mean, the divisional matchups, teams with a good front, like, obviously there's something there. But in the postseason, if the Ravens are afraid to run the ball, it will hurt them.
I mean,
like,
I
think it will.
24 carries for almost 200 rushing yards against Buffalo whenever they played them in week 4. Like that's like when you put the comparisons of what their game plans are, it truly feels like week to week, Harbaugh and the rest of that offense just sit in the room and they go, All right, somebody spin the wheel and let's see how many carries Derek's going to get this week.
I listen, and I get it. The Bengals is actually a good criticism, Jim, because listen, you and I both know, Burn, that Geno Atkins and Damani Pecco aren't walking through that door anytime immediately to shore
Correct.
up that defensive tackle squad. I get you. So again, I think the lesson that needs to be learned isn't necessarily that they need to run the ball more, as is they need to not abandon it. And then in that fourth quarter, when defensive fronts tire, then you hit them with it. We just literally watch college teams do that every goddamn week. I watched it against Arizona State 2 weeks ago when UCF did it, and should have won the game if special teams didn't cost them 14 goddamn points.
Yeah. And again, to Sean's point, like that, this is what the Ravens have built themselves to be. Like they have built themselves to be a team that is going to be deadly on both sides of the ball in the trenches. So let's do it. Especially
and he's healthy. Unlike on these where
exactly.
Gus Edwards and JK were hurt.
Exactly.
The asset is still healthy. What the fuck, Clyde?
Anyways, exactly. All right. What did I learn this past weekend? I learned that Netflix may not be ready for the NFL on Christmas.
Wow. I'm kind of surprised. I'm surprised it took this long for Netflix to be the butt of a joke.
Yeah, man. I watched, or at least tried to watch, Mike Tyson pretend to box in a fight for 8 rounds on Friday night, and the whole time I'm sitting there, there was part of the concern in me was, wow, the WWE goes live on Netflix on January 6th. Now, I don't think there's going to be 70 million people watching at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Monday nights for Monday Night Raw. That said, there's going to be a lot of people who are tuned in to the NFL on Netflix on Christmas Day, and it may not be. You may be sending lumps of coal to Roger Goodell's office if there is a repeater of what happened from AT&T Stadium on Friday, because that was a mess.
Fellas, y'all know already that Roger was on the phone to Netflix office by the second hour of delays. I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. They are. I'm sure.
Now, if you fellas need a quick, like it was a semi fix. I managed to, like, by the time it got to the fight, I had figured out that if I backed it up from live about 30 seconds and was just behind live, I had no major buffer issues. Like when I got to like 30 to 45 seconds, somewhere like that. So technically, I didn't know how tired Mike was right in live time.
Yeah,
I definitely kept getting sent back to the women's fight.
I kept getting sent back.
Yeah, that was something weird with Netflix, like the interactivity of it. Whenever I would have to stay, it would go back to my previous point.
Yeah,
and anything I'd done recently didn't save. There was definitely a lot of issues there.
Yeah. But I'm sure
hopefully their coverage is better, because the profiles and the celebrities and the people they chose to talk about that fight were just as bad. Man, I couldn't figure out why I was watching, who I was watching. I was like, is this guy high, right? Like, there's times where I'm like, are these people on drugs? Like, I don't understand what they don't even know what they're saying. Like, they had one point where one person was talking and the camera was on someone else, and that person was like staring off into space creepily, and I didn't know what was. I was like,
smoke crack.
Yeah, and that's how I felt. I was like, that guy.
Yeah, it was
crack.
It was a bumpy ride. They made it to the end.
What a trip.
As much as I don't like Jake Paul, I will respect Jake Paul for not knocking out Mike Tyson the multiple times he could have as that fight went on. So,
if I may, like, for all the people that are complaining about the quality of boxing, you dumbass, how much was it? Well, actually, I guess if you had Netflix, it was free.
Yeah, I mean, it was free.
So, but like, if you expected great boxing from a 58-year-old man and a former Mickey Mouse Club member who's a YouTuber, that's a fucking you problem.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's on you. That's on you.
Come on, man.
If you expected great boxing, watch the women's fight and the title fight before it, and then turn it off when Mike Tyson walks out to the ring.
Yeah,
legit.
Oh yeah, if you expected I expected,
I mean, I think there was clearly a line that was drawn that said, Mike, don't don't hit him hard early, and Jake, don't hit him hard late.
Yeah.
Like it was pretty much
Go
just,
out
look,
there, give him a good show. It was like Thunder Lips in Rocky in Rocky 3. Just give him a good show.
God, if I didn't hear him talk about him biting his glove one more time, I was just like,
Yeah,
we get
that
it. He's biting his glove.
That was
Like,
something.
That's nuts, though. I mean, I get why they're enamored with it, but I'm listen, man. I'm no fight expert.
Well, the
but,
weird
like,
part was he had a picture of Holyfield's ear on his left thumb. Like that was
Oh,
the
this
weird
guy.
part. That was the
Hey.
weird part.
Ayo.
Something. Mike Tyson.
Spinal.